And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Barton Simmons. That's Tom Fornelli. You see those sirens in your feed. You know that it's an emergency podcast because after the twists and the turns, I mean, gentlemen, we said Hugh Freeze right when Gus Malzahn was fired. Then we found out reportedly that there was a coup at work that Kevin Steele potentially for multiple years has been working on to curry favor with other members of the Auburn booster community. We had Billy Napier in the mix, Steve Sarkisian in the mix. Brent Venables' name was tied to this job for about 90 minutes before it was reported that you can cross Venables' name off the list. Numerous other names coming up there. But as we arrive here on Tuesday evening, December 22nd, Bryan Harsin, Boise State's Bryan Harsin, which just like first reaction, not to just grab the mic and take it, but good coach. Okay, cool. Good coach. And number two, why wasn't this on any other list? Like, I'm sure that Auburn's going to say, this is our guy. This is our number one guy. It's the only coach we offered. It's the only coach we talked to. This was our top target the whole way. So to me, there feels like two conversations I'd like to tackle during this emergency podcast. Number one is the search, but then number two is the hire. Barton Simmons, which way would you want to go with this first, the search or the hire?
First of all, a toast to the Auburn coaching search. You will live fondly in my memory. I caution, I hesitate to even mention you in the same breath as the Tennessee coaching search, because that was next level greatness, but you gave it a really good effort to get funky on us. And for that, I appreciate you. Secondly, I think one of my initial reactions here is this hire is boldly boring. Like there was clearly this compulsion growing in the Auburn community and within the Auburn decision makers. I don't know, clearly it was being painted as this compulsion growing to make this hire. And there are all these like very Auburn names that you're supposed to go with. And they're all these SEC pedigree type of coaches that Auburn was circling around. And then it goes off the board to a guy that's just a flat out good coach.
Good coach.
Just a good coach. And I actually suspect that this is a really good hire. And one of my biggest pet peeves is this idea that unless you've been in the SEC, you can't get in the SEC. Like it's different league there, different kind of recruiting, different level of play, different week in, week out. Like, this is the SEC. And that's why we got to hire the Will Muschamps and Jeremy Pruitts and, all these guys that have been in the league and know what it takes. It's like, all right, how's that going? It's Nick Saban and everybody else. How's that going? And so I think because this guy, he coached at Arkansas State, but basically he doesn't even really have familiarity with the footprint, but he's a good coach. And guess what? When you're a good coach and you run a good program and you're organized and you're disciplined and you're effective in presenting game plans, like, you can be a good coach in other places. So I think this is a good hire. I'm sort of, I don't know. It feels good. Kind of feels good. I like it. It was fun to see. And so cheers to you.
I echo all that. I do think that in its ridiculous, backward, dumbass way, Auburn backdoored itself into what I think is a good hire. And, Bryan Harsin had not been shy about his thoughts about the Mountain West in recent, weeks or years, really. And there's been talk about Boise leaving for the American. And that was kind of sending out like some alarm bells to maybe other programs that are interested that, hey, maybe Bryan Harsin is somebody, if we're interested in, we could probably pry away from Boise, because he doesn't seem to be all that thrilled with the situation. And I think that he's a very good coach. But to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think that I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, Barton, about like the whole, they're not, it's the SEC. We need somebody with SEC experience. I don't think you do, but I do think that there could be an adjustment period here. So I think if I'm an Auburn fan, like maybe give him a year or two before deciding that it's time to run him out of town, because there is going to be an adjustment, because like you said, he spent 1 year at Arkansas State and he spent a couple years at Texas as like an offensive coordinator before taking the Boise job. So he's not super familiar with the area. He's from Boise. He's coached most of his life in the Pacific Northwest, and culturally, football and everything, it is different being in Alabama as it is compared to being in the Northwest. So I do think that he's going to have to adjust to it. And I also think that that Boise State program he took over, which he's had tremendous success at, and he's done a magnificent job of maintaining what Chris Peterson had built and had going there. But he took over a program that was already kind of running pretty smoothly. And now he's stepping into a situation where I don't know if it's running all that smoothly. I think the talent is there. It's just, as we've seen with the process that has gone into this hire and how many people have their hands in the pot, I don't think he's just going to be able to go in there and automatically, he, like with Boise, when he took that team over, he already had the best team in his conference. He's not inheriting the best team in his conference. He's inheriting a team that's well below what the best team in the conference is right now. So I think there could be an adjustment to him there for being able to compete with Alabama, for being able to compete with Georgia, Florida, LSU, Texas A&M. So I think, like I said, Auburn fans, don't expect huge things right away. Give him a year or two to let him get settled and get things figured out, get the lay of the land. And then I do think, like you said, Barton, he's a good football coach. At that point, things should then start trending in the right direction. It's just, will Auburn have the patience for it? I don't know.
Bryan Harsin got a good, he's been trying to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Trying to get Boise the hell out of the Mountain West. And so props for him for getting this kind of a gig. Chip, you generally are of sound mind and reason, and I would like your opinion on this. Do you think that this was as big of a disaster of a search on the inside as it looked and appeared on the outside, or do you think that was just a bunch of boosters trying to act like they knew what they were talking about, and in reality is like, because Bryan Harsin was never even on the hot list, basically. So I'm curious where we're landing on this.
So I think that there has to be some ownership taken in the fact that reporters have to have sources, and a lot of the storylines that we're pulling are coming from reporters. And some of the storylines aren't even facts. Like the reports that we were getting from the Auburn scene were like, listen, just got off the phone, Auburn search is a disaster, and all of us are just getting popcorn, right? We're like, yes. Tell us more, feed us more. Like we were just only encouraging reporting that didn't get us anywhere closer to actually having an Auburn head coach. We wanted more. Like, no. Please tell us more about how they were going to force Kevin Steele as the defensive coordinator on whoever the next head coach would be, so that the Kevin Steele boosters could still have the access that they were hoping to get when they were running the whole Kevin Steele coup to begin with. Like, I think that it was probably not as much of a disaster because it was being run by a search firm, right? Weren't they using Parker out of Atlanta? Like when you use the executive search committee, which charges way more than the Cover 3 podcast would charge you, reminder, I do think that there is some organization to it. So I don't think it was I don't think the actual search in terms of the athletic director and the university president and the Auburn officials involved with the hire, I don't think it was as messy as we wanted to make it, because what we were getting was a lot of insight into the warring factions that you were discussing. And the warring factions never reached to the point of what you mentioned at the beginning, Barton. It never involved Phil Fulmer coming and yanking the AD out before the AD hires Mike Leach. Like, on a plane, nearly hires Mike Leach. We never involved the Greg Schiano. Like, there's so many
fan revolts.
Yeah, no fan revolt.
Well, there was wasn't there a stop steal?
Stop the steal.
Twitter,
yeah.
Twitter put Just a little junior Tennessee action.
It's a little junior Tennessee,
and
but
like
not all the way. To answer your earlier question,
we also saw some like former and current Auburn players kind of like, tweeting clown emojis and those kind of things in reaction to the news. So it was getting there. But I do think that, yeah, part of it is just the SEC when it comes to football is a lot like the NBA in that there's very much a soap opera aspect to it. And like a lot of NBA media and coverage is devoted to that, like hashtag this league. Oh, the pettiness. Oh, this kind of like that kind of dumb stuff more than it is like the actual games. And I do think that when it comes to the coaching carousel in the SEC, there is a whole lot of this league. Oh, crazy that gets blown out of proportion a little bit.
I do think that, you mentioned giving Bryan Harsin some time, Tom. I do think that there has to have been, and this is just like an instant reaction thought, there had to have been a conversation that was held at some point, which was, we'll just get him to coach football and we'll try to keep everything else under control, which is a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah.
Just as a prediction right here, the good football coach can survive and can lead Auburn to SEC championship contention. You can win SEC championships at Auburn. Bryan Harsin can win SEC championships at Auburn, but I see this hire as getting someone to take care of the football stuff. Who takes care of the rest of the stuff? That is just one of those Auburn behind the scenes, or maybe the athletic director, Alan Green, is going to be the one who steps up and says, I'm going to be able to rein everybody in right now. But I do not see Bryan Harsin being someone who is even going to be asked to try and get everybody on the same page at that level.
Yeah, I think if this doesn't work out, it's probably not going to be Bryan Harsin's fault.
I would agree with that. So what do we think? We said Hugh Freeze out the gate. Lane Kiffin reportedly was pushing for it hard, and people were pushing for Lane Kiffin. You got, we mentioned Steve Sarkisian, Brent Venables, the Billy Napier. This is the second SEC job that he has released an official statement on a Twitter graphic for to talk about his commitment to the Ragin' Cajuns. I mean, like, in any other highlights from the Auburn search and the twists and the turns?
Again, like, I feel, Barton, I'm sorry about your Kevin Steele ticket. I know that you were hoping on that one. You had a lot of money on it, I'm sure, but it's just,
hey, it had a fighting chance there. Can you believe Billy Napier? Like, I do believe, I believe the reports that Billy Napier turned Auburn down, because I believe that probably Auburn tried to force some assistance on him, and Billy Napier's what's clear about, like, the book is out on Napier at this point. Like, he's a stud coach, but if you're going to hire him, you better come correct with an offer that is going to give him a chance to be successful. Like, he ain't going to just take your terms because he wants to get out of Louisiana. So I kind of respect that. And it's sort of interesting. I mean, how good do you feel if you're Louisiana right now? You had your Sun Belt head coach turned down an SEC East and an SEC West job in the same cycle. So
you think Bill Clark turned it down too? Was Bill Clark?
That one was a little weird. Like, I didn't quite understand how that, like, whatever. This is just from the tweet. I don't really know, but that one was a little bit odd. I don't know what happened there.
Listen, Bryan Harsin was the first person offered the job, and he was the first person they even interviewed and reached out and contacted. The only person
to make the way too unnecessary relationship tie right here. Just like as disgusted or as much as we love all the coaches talking about how they're smoking hot wife shows, how they're good at recruiting. I know that we love bringing in relationships to these college football discussions, but this is going to date somebody who isn't girlfriends with everybody else who your friends' girlfriends are, right? Like, there's like, you could have taken on Sark, or you might have, been able to take on somebody who also already has friends, or like went to high school with all the other girls in your social circle. But, you really free yourself up from any like backstabbing or like extra drama by going to find somebody that's a little bit off the beaten path. Maybe it's a friend from class, right? Like it's not somebody that's in your social circle, but like you met her because y'all are in the same like English 203 class and y'all got in the same small group. You've been peer editing each other. It's like, ooh, starting to hit it off a little bit. Like, we'll see if you can work it in. We'll see if you can blend in with everybody else over here at these parties.
No, this was you needed a vacation from the craziness of work and life, and you went up north to the northwest to the wilderness of Idaho just to get away from it all a little bit. And what do you know? When you were there, you
fell in love.
Somebody, and you fell in love, and you brought them home to Alabama to meet the family.
What is the family? Man, I hope we have SEC media days. I mean, what is Bryan Harsin's, like, what are his eyeballs going to look like if he hits the Hoover, Alabama lobby and he gets to see the zoo that is SEC media days?
I feel like, I mean, that's the thing with Bryan being at Boise, his personality isn't as widely known. It's going to be an interesting situation to see how he fits, because I think that culturally he has a lot in common with the area. I just don't know if he's got like that biggish of a personality that like tends to, dominate the headlines in the SEC, which might be a good thing, honestly.
Yeah. Just coach ball and win.
Yeah.
Got to get some recruiters.
It'll be interesting to know if, like, that's the interesting thing is the recruiting side of it. Like,
yeah.
Because that's the part of the narrative that was presented on Gus Malzahn was he just wasn't recruiting at a top 5 level like the other national title contenders are. And I have there's no reason to think Bryan Harsin is going to come in and recruit at that level. Maybe he does, but that would be a surprise.
That's the thing. Do you think this does it? Because they're 41st in the ratings right now. Does this do anything, do you think, for Auburn's 2020 class? Or
I mean, it's not. They're not going to like shoot up into the top 10. But
I mean, I go back to something Barton said when we were doing our signing day discussions. Like Auburn's Auburn. Players commit to Auburn because they're gonna they're from the Atlanta area, or they're from Alabama, or they're from somewhere else in Georgia, and they want to go to Auburn. Auburn kind of recruits itself, right?
Yes. I mean, but like, so I do think, like he's going to have some coaches that can get in there in the state of Alabama and win some, know the landscape a little bit, know the coaches. I don't know if you can come in and like Bronco Mendenhall this thing and just transport your BYU staff to Charlottesville, Virginia, because Auburn is recruiting a different type of player than Virginia is. And so that it's going to be very telling and interesting who they hire and what the staff looks like.
We will be keeping an eye on it, and we will keep you up to date as well. You can follow him on Twitter at Barton Simmons. You can follow him at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Don't forget bowl season daily every single morning in your feed. Subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Cover3 for that multi-platform excellence. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.